Today we'll be talking about what is traditional managed services support and what are the major uh, salient features of services support, how we reached into traditional IT operations, how it is managed, then maybe something which was lacking in your traditional IT or managed services support, because of which we continue to evolve, and SRE is a result of that evolution. And uh, what exactly is SRE and how does it fit into our unique businesses or business models or organizations, and how each organization should transform their existing support teams or operations teams into SRE. Then what are the challenges they fail, and what pitfalls may be there which you need to avoid, and what are the couple of things which you need to focus in terms of your culture and mindset, in terms of when you're transforming people and your teams, and there'll be a lot of collaboration between different teams. Right? Then we'll talk about our experience with one of our retail clients, how we initiated that journey, and how we closed it successfully. So let's jump onto the traditional managed services. So, what is IT operations or managed services? What exactly are the key areas or key responsibilities of a regular operations team, right? So, let's focus on that first. We try to understand how we are operating in the traditional mode for so many years, and what forced us to evolve into the latest methodologies and upskill our technologies. So the key responsibilities of an operations team is to manage the uptime of the platform which they are managing. They need to make sure that their platform is up and running 24 cross 7 uh, at the maximum or whatever they have signed up for in terms of uptime. It should be up and running and performant. It should be meeting their SLAs in terms of performance. And then another responsibility is managing the configuration, releases, security, scalability, disaster recovery, documentation processes, IT governance. So there are a number of things, but the key thing is that the platform is something which needs to be up and running most of the time, if not 100% of the time. So, so that's something which was being managed or handled pretty well for so long, for a number of years, by the managed services teams. So these are some of the key areas which managed services support team has been performing very effectively from traditional IT days, 10 years back, 20 years back, or maybe some years back. And so this has been working pretty well in your traditional waterfall model, when your development releases used to span months, weeks, or maybe sometimes even years. So it was pretty effective in managing the platform, and the development cycles were pretty much restricted, and they used to release softwares or new features to their customers at pretty within a long time. It used to take a long time to develop those new features for them. So after that, there has been a lot of advancement in terms of technologies. And the key goal of all the development teams, I mean, this is something which has been causing a lot of friction between your operations and development teams for a number of years now. That the key goal of all the development teams is to release the latest or newest features to their customers as soon as possible, uh, and without any delays. However, as we talked about, the key goal of your operations team is to make sure that your platform is 100% up. It's up all the time, and they just cannot let any new changes introduced by the development teams to break the platform, or while they are on the watch, while they are watching the platform, it just cannot happen. So there used to be always a friction between the traditional managed services teams and operations and development teams, that whenever a new change was introduced, the operations team used to always come up with a huge checklist and a number of IT governance procedures that you need to meet this criteria to make sure that we are not risking the stability, security, and performance of the platform. So that was good for some time while these guys are working on the in the waterfall mode. But with the advent of agile methodologies and the advancement in terms of technology, how fast these guys can release new features and technologies to their end customers, this friction became more and more evident, which ultimately led to the advent of DevOps, where people where the industry leads try to uh, shorten the gap between development and operations. So the goal of the operations team, or turning them into DevOps, was to make sure that operations teams start thinking like development teams, right? And they are all aligned to that single goal of releasing these new features, or new software and new products to their end users as soon as possible. So this worked pretty well. That now the operations teams are also thinking like development teams, and for this to make sure that we are working on this, it required a huge cultural change in terms of operations teams, because they uh, had a had a certain bent of mind which always restricted them towards making sure that the development teams are pushed back. But now that mindset change was happening, not really that well what I've seen in the industry, uh, but overall, as and when the operations team started adopting new technologies and started accelerating the releases with the advent of like CI/CD is the heart of at the core of DevOps. That you have this pipeline where you are continuously uh, coding, building, and releasing to the production platforms, and you have continuous testing and all of that built into the pipeline. So once development teams and operations teams started collaborating with that approach, that tension suddenly definitely dropped a bit. This is something which has been noticed across industry. However, there was still a number of impediments which were there while working with this approach. The primary focus of DevOps was, and DevOps means both the operations and development teams, was still to make sure that we are releasing the software into production as soon as possible, and at an accelerated velocity. However, there were still some gaps now, which were more evident with the faster release of the software. That your reliability of the platform might be compromised, or stability and performance of your platform might be compromised. So that's how it required a new radical approach towards managing your platform production platforms. But and people started thinking how to best do this or achieve this. So surprisingly, uh, the the solution which everyone was looking for, it didn't come from a radically new approach, but something which had already been in existence for quite some time, even before DevOps. So SRE has been in existence since early 2000s, and that's something which was conceived by Google, and and it predated DevOps, but it was popularized after 2016, as all of you guys know, or most of you guys are aware of it, that it was popularized after the book released by Google in 2016. So what it really does is, what people were looking at even before we arrived at that solution, was that we need to break the silos, and we need to have robust governance processes along with technical know-how and skill set, right? It needs to be a mix of all of these to make sure that we are optimizing or accelerating the release of new features into production, and along with that we are also not compromising um, the security, stability, and performance of the platform. So that's how we started thinking about something called site reliability engineering. So I'll give you some background around how site reliability engineering was conceived, and and how it makes sense now, or it even makes even more sense now that we are in the era of cloud, microservices, containers. Everything is being developed as a service, exposed. The platforms have become more complex now, right? So it really calls for a radical new shift in our thinking from our traditional ways of thinking. DevOps definitely has helped us somehow, but we need to evolve in terms of an idea which predated DevOps. So site reliability engineering is something which was conceived by Google. No SRE talk, I would believe, be complete without giving the due credit to Google. Though people both hate and love Google, but let's give the credit to Google where it is due. They are the ones who have conceived, conceptualized, and pioneered the whole methodology of site reliability engineering and made available to all of us IT folks. So this happened sometime in the early 2000s when Google's one of the developers from software background, Ben Trainer, he was tasked to set up an operations team. So obviously he was from a software background. So he states that SRE is something which will happen if you task a software engineer to do operations. So in purest Google form, uh, site reliability engineering is nothing but approaching your operations with a software engineering mindset, that all problems are related to software and you solve that problems using software. That's how SRE was conceptualized, and over a period of time, uh, it has been matured and pioneered again by Google, and a lot of organizations are now doing SRE, not just Google, but Google had that unique capability or uniqueness about this whole thing due to some factors which make it different from other organizations. So let's talk about a couple of points. What are the key features of SRE? And definitely a couple of things which we have introduced or which we have incorporated in our organizations are unique and different from what Google does. I'll let you know how it is different or why we should see that we are implementing SRE uniquely to our organizations. But the core of this thought process or SRE is reliability of the platform. Something which was missing in your DevOps approach. DevOps was primarily focused towards accelerating the releases, but here we are talking about having a team which is also accelerating the releases to the end customers or releases of new features to your customers as soon as possible. But at the same time, uh, reliability of the platform is at the core of between site. It sits between site and engineering. This reliability world. So how do we achieve it? That's the big question. So if you take a look back and once we start talking about SRE, you'll feel that there are a number of things which you are already doing in your operations functions. Now the big question is, if we are already doing it, why do we need SRE? So we need to first understand what exactly is SRE. As I said, it's the core is reliability. Then how do we do it? We need to, in our specific cases, we need to uh, have the business goals very solidly defined, documented, documented in your SOWs or agreed with your clients and stakeholders within or outside the organization, right? And they need to be documented, and you write it down in an SOW document or whatever document you're working upon in terms of SLAs, SLOs, and SLIs. You'll say, what is different over here? Okay, you are already writing and defining your SLOs, but what we have seen is that the problem arises when you are not properly measuring these SLOs and SLAs. So you need to have very strictly defined business objectives and SLAs, and you should have the capability and capacity to measure those SLAs. Unless until you are doing a periodic review and measuring those SLAs, they're of no use. We have seen that. I mean, even in our case, we have seen that someone has written an SLA some 10 years back, but it still holds true, because things might have changed, things might have evolved, applications have evolved, technology has evolved, but we are still following the same SLA which was written by someone 10 years back. So we really need to take a closer look at all of these things which are at the core of your platform and core of the operations team's delivery. Uh, of course, we should be focused on reliability and the accelerated velocity of your releases. Then another thing, which of course I would say again refer back to Google, is that uh, the original SRE team in Google was formed of software engineers. So they had a different mindset in terms of approaching every operational problems, which was software. So uh, with that approach, obviously a lot of things which were being or which traditional IT operations teams and managed services teams do are manual. And if you throw the same task to a software engineer, he will approach it differently, and he will not like doing the repetitive work, but will automate it. So automation first mindset is one of the key features of SRE, which every team should be implementing, or every organization who wants to implement SRE should take a look at it. Definitely, there will be a number of things in the mix, such as tooling and software engineering and service improvement, which are or required for SRE. But coming back to Google, their core principle was that you need 50% of the time of your operations team to be spent on software development or engineering. That will vary from organization to organization. But let's move on to the next slide. So coming back to the principles, what I was talking about SRE and how it is different, or how we are evolving from managed services. Definitely, you are already doing a lot of these things in your managed services or IT operations teams without even calling that SRE. You can go ahead and call whatever you want your team, right? But the principles still stand the same. That is velocity, measuring the SLAs, SLOs, and SLIs. Anshuman will be talking a lot more about SLAs and SLOs, how we have been measuring and how we applied it into our projects. Because unless and until we are able to measure the SLAs and define the success parameters, SRE won't be successful. It will be just any other traditional operations team, right? And uh, another thing which will be at the core of your SRE teams will be monitoring. So you need to have a robust monitoring in place to know and understand what's happening in your platform, when things break, how to correct them, and you should be able to correlate and fix potential issues. Because if you don't have this in place, you will be scrambling all the time. More than 100% of the time you'll be spending on operations, which we don't want. We want our operations teams to be focusing more on engineering tasks as opposed to operations. So if you are spending a lot more time, not exactly what Google would have wanted, but something definitely that's something which is ideal. But if you're spending a lot more time on operations as opposed to engineering tasks, there is something definitely wrong with SRE. It's good if you, I mean, even if you're working in traditional managed services or IT operations mode, but that's something which you really need to take a closer look at. Then, of course, the release engineering comes from the DevOps approach. You'll be working very closely with your DevOps or development teams, and to make sure that you are releasing new features in a controlled way. And simplicity is something which we imbibe, or which we focus upon in our organization. That your platforms need to be simple. You just need to be lean and simple, so it's easier managing your platforms. So this brings us to a question now. Does Google SRE work for all? So let's talk about Google SRE. We have been referring back and forth a lot about Google. What exactly is Google SRE? Does it work for all? Will it work for my organization? And does it only work for organizations like Google? So we have to take a step back and see what are the core principles of SRE. Do we need to implement SRE in its purest form, what Google has conceptualized, or can we modify it, customize it? This is something which we need to closely evaluate. But let me tell you one thing. Most of the organizations I've worked with, I've interacted with, they don't need a Google SRE. Why? Because they are not Google. It's a simple fact that most of the organizations operate at a fundamentally at a very different scale, and they have their unique customers. Their business is different, and it's not the same as Google. That's why you don't need everything what Google does, or you don't need to copy everything what Google does. But we can definitely uh, take the core principles of SRE. So let me tell you why Google is different. uh, Google maintains and manages hundreds of data centers with hundreds and thousands of servers, both virtual hardware and pretty much their hardware and softwares is homogeneous across their data centers. Of course, there'll be a few outlier layers here and there. There'll be few and a lot of exceptions, but most of it is the same, right? And then Google has been able to implement or 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 have the SRE teams work on this environment in a very different way. So they are working more like any other ISP, apart from, of course, their reach to their customers in terms of the applications they have built. They also operate more like any other organizations which create and manage data centers, provide services. But this is for their internal consumption, the kind of data centers and fiber optics and the cabling and networks that Google maintains. So it really made sense for them to have SRE manage this kind of work. The key principle for this was that when you are having or managing your operations or your infrastructure or platform in your traditional mode, in your traditional IT operations or managed services mode, the thing is that you have to scale up your people, your number of people or your teams as your platform grows. So this is really not possible in today's world, or it was not possible for Google to do that, given the scale of the platforms or data centers they were managing. Because you cannot have hundreds of thousands of people managing that platform what they were managing. So that was practically impossible for them to do so. So that's how they had to manage the platform with the software engineers, and they had to automate everything. But do we really need to do that in our organizations? I would say, talking to so many people and the number of different people I have spoken to, I don't think one size fits all formula will be applicable over here. The way we implemented this in our organization is that we started this journey of transforming managed services a couple of years back, right? But we realized that we are serving or managing uh, different clients across verticals and domains, from auto, from retail, pharma, financial. So all our clients are pretty much different. They are not the same. So does one size fit for all formula work for all of these clients or even for our team? No. So what we had to do, we had to have the right people or right mix of people and have that team created who would be flexible enough to adapt and work for each of these different clients. Anshuman will be talking about later in the talk how this was implemented for one of our retail clients. But the core thing is that we need to, the key principle is that you still can lift or copy the core principles of SRE, which are that you should have a defined business objective. You should be able to list down few simple SLAs, SLOs, which you are going to meet, and you should be able to successfully measure them, right? And you need to have the right kind of people, or right with the right mindset to manage the reliability of the platform. And that's something which we worked upon, and that's what each business organization has to evaluate, what fits for their business. So let's talk about people. I mean, we have been uh, the the key thing about technologists is that they focus a lot on technology, and that's what we are supposed to do. That's what we are good at, and that's what we are supposed to do, and that's how we think. uh, but for any business organization, what happens is, uh, no matter how great a platform or software or product you build, I mean, it can have the best technology, it can be super performant, it can be super secure, it can be super scalable. Everything is there, but it's no good unless and until your customers use it. So even if you have a pretty shabby software out there, and if more people are using it, that's what works. And you need to work upon that software which clicks with the people and which the people are inclined to use. Similarly, you cannot ignore the people who enable that software for your customers to use. So we really need to focus on people, in terms of upskilling them, making them aware of what our business goals are, and how we upskill them in terms of technology, with the latest evolving technical stacks, which we are currently seeing in terms of how we evolved in cloud, microservices, everything working as a service, uh, and security as well. So this is something which we really need to focus upon, and what it requires is a culture and mindset change. I'll move back to the traditional operations team. What they used to do was, if it was an infrastructure team or an application support team, the way they used to think was that this is my problem, this is their problem. Once a product is developed and thrown over into production by the developers, it became the problem of the development operations teams. So obviously they came up with a huge checklist which had to be followed, so you don't break the platform and all. But now things have evolved with the advent of DevOps, and we need to make sure that release velocity is accelerated, and how we need to make sure that we are uh, evolving and changing our people to meet the current business scenarios and the evolving business needs. So how do we do that? 2 years back, or more than 2 years back, when we started our journey, uh, the biggest challenge which we faced was not really in terms of technology, but in how we evolve or how we change the mindset of our people. So that's something which we had been constantly working upon. But you need to carefully craft the learning plan or the upskilling plan for your people. You need to make sure that, okay, tomorrow I'm starting an SRE team and it requires a software development background. So I just dismantle my operations team and I bring a new set of people. So that's something which never works, never had worked, never will work. So what you need to do is, you need to carefully evaluate what exactly is your business objective or goal, and you need to devise a plan for your system engineers or application support people to bring them on the same page. Uh, what I've seen works best is that you need to have the right mix of people in the team. For that, if, say, for example, you have your network and system administrators in an operations team, you need to devise a plan in terms of how they upskill in terms of software development or at least coding. They should be aware that any problem you solve, it has to be automated, and they have to spend sufficient time in terms of bringing new frameworks like auto healing, self healing, or something like that, which enables their operations teams. And bring a couple of additional folks from your, maybe your development teams, into your operations team, right? So they have some understanding of how that the software piece of thing works, right? And then you upskill them in terms of your network and system administration skills. They should have some bent of mind, uh, where they have some inclination towards system administration and networks. So you need these kind of people to augment your team. Of course, you cannot replace them, as I said earlier, because this is the team which knows your business perfectly. They know whom to reach out to, when to ignore alerts, when to be super sensitive to which ones, or how to talk to your, or they will have your business relations as well, because these are the people who will be interacting a lot with your stakeholders and clients. So you cannot just go ahead and replace the team, but the thing is that you need to upskill them. And as we say that technology can be learned, but you need to change their mindset with mixing the teams, the software teams and the infrastructure teams or operations teams. Once you have gone through that whole thing of upskilling your teams and augmenting the team, mixing the teams, the development teams, the folks, all the folks won't have the same skill set, but they need to have some understanding, a broad understanding from development and your code to your platform in terms of cloud and networks and system administration. That's the mix which is required. And then how it really works, how do you introduce that in your software development lifecycle, just to make sure that operations are working as you have envisioned when you're creating this SRE team. So you need to make sure that you have your SRE folks, at least a couple of folks involved in your software development cycle from the start, from the beginning, from the first sprint, or from the design phase. So they have the complete understanding of your software. And and they should be really hands-on in terms of they should understand what are the business objectives of your of this sprint, or of this release, or your software. And they should be involved in configuration management, building platforms, writing some piece of code. Maybe that'll be good. That'll be great if they can do that. But if they're involved from the beginning and to security till the time it is released into your production, before that teams takes over. So this is how this whole thing will work. uh, it's really not going to work if you just have a SRE team waiting somewhere outside your development life cycle, and they will just catch the ball when you throw it after your production release. It's not going to work. They need to understand what it feels like when you write code, what are the different challenges you are facing in with your clients and businesses. So that's something really important when you create your SRE teams. I'll hand over to
So,
Anshuman to. Oh, sorry,
yeah, Mike,
Amit.
sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry to disturb you.
yeah.
So, I think you talked about DevOps and SRE and all. So, I think if we talk about the real industry, in industry, I heard like people say like DevOps, SRE, they are same. There's no major difference. So, how you will treat like? Do you really feel that, or is it a true statement that SRE and DevOps both are same?
Thanks for bringing this up, Amit. I mean, that's a question which has been bothering a lot of industry experts.
Yeah.
I mean, but let me tell you, I mean, with since since 2016, when Google launched that SRE book, everybody has gone gaga that we just need SRE in our organization. This is something which will magically turn around everything. uh, SRE is no magic wand which is going to turn around everything in your organization from tomorrow. Everything will be okay. Uh, you have to remember that it's the same people, it's the same set of people who will be working on managing your operations. You need to devise a plan. You need to conceptualize, and it's more about the methodology and mindset and idea. How you upskill them, how you change them, and how you enable them to manage your platform and operations. Now, coming to your question, whether DevOps and SRE are same, or it's like repackaging DevOps and calling it SRE. No, it's not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. So, though there is no standard definition of SRE in the industry as of now, apart from Google, uh, that's because it's fairly new for the market, and each business organization or each industry is trying to adapt and modify and customize as per their requirements. So definitely there is no consensus on SRE, but the key features still remain the same. Let's go to DevOps. When DevOps was conceptualized, the whole idea was that we need to bring development and operations teams together. So that's the very same idea for SRE as well. That's what SRE does. You need to bring development, or you need to break boundaries and barriers. You need to bring the development and operations team together. So how does DevOps do it? DevOps is primarily focused on accelerating the velocity of your releases, of how fast you are releasing your features to your end customers. And how it does that is definitely with a software engineering mindset. It works closely with the development teams on building those pipelines and accelerating the releases. But SRE goes a step ahead of what DevOps is doing. So I heard someone saying from Google that SREs are the people who implement DevOps. So SRE goes a step ahead by focusing more on, apart from accelerating the releases and velocity, what it does is it goes and it focuses more on reliability and security and stability of the platform. So reliability, as I said earlier, it's at the heart of your SRE. Reliability is the center word of SRE. So it focuses on your reliability and stability of the platform apart from implementing DevOps. And how it does it is that it has to be measurable, and with the right skill set and with the right mindset of your teams. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, I totally got it.